All right, now to a new revelation in the Russia investigation involving that controversial 2016 Trump Tower meeting with a Russian lawyer. Donald Trump Jr. was promised dirt on Hillary Clinton at that meeting, but says that dirt never materialized. The president's son made a mysterious phone call, or two mysterious phone calls rather, to blocked numbers, unknown numbers, just before and just after that meeting. And there's been a lot of speculation that he may have been indeed calling his father, President Trump. But sources are telling CNN that Senate investigators have new information that shows that Trump Jr. actually called two business associates instead. And yet, that revelation may actually lead to more questions than answers. Reports say that one of those associates was a Trump campaign advisor and real estate mogul who actually traveled with Mr. Trump to Moscow back in the 1990s. Let's unpack all of this with Joseph Moreno, a former Justice Department prosecutor. Joseph, thank you so much for being with us. So the fact that we now believe that he wasn't talking to his father, President Trump, how significant is that?
Well, Zane, you hit it exactly right in the lead-in, right? It answers some questions, but it opens up some others. So obviously President Trump is using this to say this is a victory. And right on cue, he wrote in a tweet last night that these phone calls were just conclusively found out not to be made by me. They were made to friends and business associates of Don, meaning Don Jr. So what that says is two things. One, it enforces the president's position that he did not know about the Trump Tower meeting, which of course led to a number of issues about potential campaign finance violations.
It doesn't conclusively prove that. I mean, just because the phone call wasn't to President Trump, that doesn't mean, I'm not saying that he did communicate with his father, but that doesn't mean necessarily that he didn't communicate with his father perhaps in person, for example.
Absolutely right. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I mean, right? I want to see evidence. So I don't want to say that anything is conclusive until I see a report from the Senate or the House or Special Counsel Mueller. So right off the bat, you're absolutely right. It is not conclusive. And tweets like this are not really helpful, right? But what it does is it sort of enforces the president's position that he didn't know about this. Whether or not there's other evidence that contradicts that, though, yet to be seen.
Okay, so we know that we believe, rather, that one of the calls was made to a man named Howard Lorber, who was reported to have deep ties to Russia and was actually reportedly involved in an effort to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. What does that tell you?
Right. So why is that significant, right? I mean, it's not a crime to do business in Russia. Mm-hmm. It's not a crime to look into potential business opportunities in Russia. The problem is that when you're running for president and you are possibly having discussions with Russia leading right up to the election, and in that same election, that country is believed to have interfered in that election to benefit you, it raises all kinds of legal and political questions about what was going on. When you layer on top of that the fact that Michael Cohen is going to jail in part because he lied about when those discussions ended and said it was January. In fact, it was June. That's a lot closer to the election. So again, lots of questions raised here, and we haven't gotten a clear, concise, supported explanation from President Trump ever as to what were these conversations about, this potential Moscow project, and how long did they go?
I want to switch gears slightly to this wide-ranging New York Times interview that Donald Trump gave with Maggie Haberman. In the interview, he talked about the fact that Rod Rosenstein, through lawyers, told him that he was not a target in the Russia investigation. Do you believe that's likely true, given that technically a sitting president cannot be indicted?
Well, so there's a lot to unpack there. First, when was this told allegedly to the president? Obviously, it's good not to be a target. It's better to be a subject. It's even better to be a witness. Those are the three categories that the Justice Department considers when they look at someone in respect to a criminal investigation. So, one, it could not be true. Two, those categories can change. So you can rise up or down based on new evidence that's found during an investigation. Also, when was this told to President Trump, if at all? So I wouldn't give a lot of stake to those comments. Again, it really veers into the inappropriate when the president talks about a pending investigation.
That's a whole other conversation, though.
Absolutely, especially when he's involved in it. So much better off if he had not say these things. It really just confuses things further.
So if he's not a target in the investigation, according to him, then why not sit down with Robert Mueller?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, the president has said, he's gone back and forth on that issue, right? Many times he said he's happy to do it, then he kind of walks that back. Then Rudy Giuliani, one of his lawyers, will say he's happy to do it, and then he kind of walks that back. The fact
and then
is
written
that,
answers instead of actually speaking, you know.
I mean, whenever you are being looked at in any capacity, whether you're a target or a subject, there's always a lot of danger about giving answers to prosecutors. And while one might say, look, just come out and tell the truth, the fact is that's very dangerous when you're being considered for potential prosecution or impeachment in the case of a president. So the safer course of action...
But from his perspective, he's not a target, right?
Well, I mean, you know, that's would be the great scenario for him. We don't know if that's true. So I get the caution. Whether or not he ultimately agrees to a conversation or written answers beyond what he's already done, we'll see. But I get why he's very reluctant to do so.
All right, Joseph Moreno, live for us there. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Always a pleasure, Zane.
Have a great weekend. Okay, so US President Trump says there's a good chance he'll declare a national emergency to bypass